course, now I don't see the little, there it is. I think we're live, Tanya. Welcome everyone to Right Fit College Right Now. My name is Beth Morgan and I work for the Columbia University Center for Veteran Transition and Integration. We are a center based at Columbia University and we help transitioning service members and veterans as they're transitioning to, through, and beyond college. Part of what the work that I do is to help folks as they're navigating their college search, help them find a right fit college. And so what we're going to be doing today is hopefully going to give you some tools and some resources, things to think about as we can help you move forward with the college application process. And we are fortunate today to have with us Tanya Ang from Veterans Education Success. Tanya is actually the lead instructor for our Attaining Higher Ed Choosing a Right Fit College section. And so Tanya, I don't know if you want to do a little bit of a brief introduction of yourself.
Sure. I'm Tanya, and I've worked in higher education for 20 years now. This August, it will be 20 years. And so I've had the opportunity to work with military connected students as a whole from the time I first started working in higher education up through now. In recent years, I've worked at the American Council on Education, where we worked with colleges and universities to build out programs and services to better support students, military connected students. And then now I'm vice president at Veterans Education Success, where we focus on doing, we do some policy and advocacy for students, but we also help do casework and do some pre-enrollment advising for students who are looking to find institutions of higher learning that are the right fit for them.
Great. So again, we talked, a little bit just a few minutes ago about some of the goals, trying to give you some tools and resources to help you navigate the process of choosing a right fit college. But we did, Tanya and I thought that it was important to sort of start this conversation out by just talking about what's going on in the time that we're living in. We're doing this during a pandemic, and so folks are dealing with a lot of different things, have a lot of different things on their plates, whether it's navigating, finishing up college courses, or making the transition out of the military and trying to find, a place to live, moving, all of those things. And so we just sort of wanted to lay a foundation for this conversation. And I know, Tanya, you have some things that you want to say, but just, give you some perspective as to how to look at this process of choosing a right fit college and doing that right now in this time.
Yeah, and you and I have talked a little bit about the fact that it is uncertain times, and whenever there is like sort of a recession or things kind of take a downward turn economically, people go back to school. And for those using GI Bill benefits or voc rehab or tuition assistance, this is the time to do it. Because there's many benefits to it, and it kind of helps like build out necessary skills to support long-term career goals, which we'll get into in a little bit. But another piece that we've talked about is that also in uncertain times, I think it's human nature to make impulsive decisions. So when you have fear or lack of clarity of what's coming next, or like, what am I going to do? How am I going to support myself and my family? We immediately just jump to like, what's the fastest and easiest thing we can get our hands on and grab onto. And like we talked also earlier about, is that this isn't just during like a global pandemic where we find ourselves in uncertain times. Sometimes it's just that transition out of the military and all of a sudden being like, I have to figure something out now, and it's coming in much faster, so I'm gonna just go to school. And I always talk to students about the fact it's really important to make sure you don't let fear and uncertainty dictate to you what your next steps are, but to take the time, and it's okay to take a little bit of time to really do some research and go through some of the processes that we're going to talk through in this next hour about finding what's going to be the best fit and the best decision. There are times where schools will pressure students to make decisions right away, like, hey, you should decide 24 hours, like within the next day, like, or today, because we're going to start a new group tomorrow or next week. And if schools are starting them right away, that means that they're on a rolling admissions process. And so there's going to be another opportunity. And so it's better to take a little bit of time, ask some necessary questions, do some personal reflection and self-digging before making a decision on where those hard-earned GI Bill benefits are going to be used.
Absolutely agree. I think if nothing else, I hope that throughout this, webinar, that people take the time to really identify where they think they want to be, and what they want to do through this process, because I think, you're absolutely right. Many times we see, transitioning service members and veterans deciding, pandemic or not, that this is, that they're going to go to college because they have these GI Bill benefits, and they're going to go to, this particular institution because they've heard their buddy goes here. And so what we want to instill in you is really taking the time to be reflective as to why you want to go someplace, what you want to do. And so with that in mind, we want to talk about a little bit about intentional decision making, and having that be the start of your process as you're navigating everything that goes on in the college application process.
Mm-hmm.
So Tanya, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about some of the things that people can think about.
Yeah, I mean, in the process of making decisions, there's a lot of things you want to consider. My daughter is a traditional undergraduate student. She went right out of high school into college, and I made her answer some of these questions herself because I really wanted her to think long term about what are your long term goals, and is where you're going to help get you to that place. And I think that is like the best perspective to have when looking for schools, is to kind of look at the end road of, what, I want to be a plumber, or I want to be a doctor. And so whatever that is that you're working towards, then it's kind of like working backwards. In that process, there's questions that you have to answer on the other end to kind of get you there too. So there's like these two bookends that you want to use as you're trying to navigate finding the right fit for you. And so the first one is to kind of ask questions such as, like, where are you now? Are you in a place that has a school close by that it would be easy for you to get to? Are you looking for a flexible program that offers a hybrid type courses where it's online and in person? Or are you looking for fully online? Is your family, like, what's going on with your family? Do you have responsibilities that it might be challenging to pursue higher education with those extra responsibilities, whether it's work or family or health or whatever it might be, and what can be done to help mitigate some of those situations, some of those challenges, while you're looking to pursue post-secondary education. I was finishing my master's program when my daughter was very sick, had a lot of health issues, and I remember submitting my last paper for my program while my daughter was in the hospital. And I was working a full-time job. I'm a single mother of 3 kids, and I had to really navigate, like, figure out how to balance that all. And I had to be able to say no to things that I would have rather been doing, like hanging out with my friends, or even sometimes with my kids, saying, hey, you guys, I love you, I can't wait to spend time with you, but I need to study right now. And so those are some things to think about before even starting the process. And it's doable, you can do it, but it's a commitment, and it's going to require a time commitment from you. And the next thing you want to kind of think about is, where do you want to go? And that's kind of like the end game piece of it. What is it that you want to do? My former boss used to always say, do you want to be an apple picker, but you live in Florida and all there is to pick are oranges? And so you need to kind of consider, like, where you want to live. What are the careers in that area that you want to live? If you're wanting to do a career that requires you moving elsewhere, or even going to a school that requires you moving elsewhere, how does that impact your family? And or even you personally, like, sometimes you may not have a family, but you need, like, you have a support network, whether it's friends or whomever, that gives you that support. And if you move away from that, is that going to be the best decision for you? And so there's just a lot of things you want to think about in the process. You know, what program, what kind of, like, if you want to be a doctor, you probably don't want to be a business major. You're going to want to be a biochem major or a pre-med major, whatever that might be. And so is the school you're going to help get you to that next level? Will you be able to apply to a doctoral program or an MD program, whatever that might be, a program, and with the degree that you have from the institution that you're going to? And so those are some things. And then the next question is higher ed really the best choice for you in that process? And that's a decision, like I talked about. There's a lot of it's a commitment, it's a time commitment. You're committing benefits that you've earned, hard-earned education benefits. You're committing time away from loved ones. There's sacrifices that will be made, and in the end they pay off, but you want to consider it all. And there are certain careers where you don't necessarily need an actual degree, and it might be better for you to go do an apprenticeship or get some sort of credentialing, or learn, go through the 2-year route and get an IT certificate that's language programming. So there's different options that are available. And I think that it's important to be honest with yourself and have some pretty hard conversations with loved ones and with yourself about what makes sense. Sorry, I'm rambling, but there's a lot there.
I absolutely agree. I think the most important thing is, for people to take the time to talk to other folks, their friends, families, their, buddies from service, to sort of think through why they're making this choice to pursue higher education, because there are other options out there, and higher education may not be the best choice for them, right now. So just sort of thinking through why it is they're pursuing, looking to pursue, going to college, and just really being intentional about that decision.
Really fast. One thing I did also want to touch on is in that process, even like the smaller things, such as like, I don't need a full 4-year degree at this moment in time. I just need X, Y, and Z classes. My recommendation is always, when you're considering that, I have worked with like adults in higher education now for 20 years. I've worked with them like across the country. And one of the things I hear consistently are students who started with like, certain credentials, or they wanted to get their real estate license, or they did X, Y, and Z to get whatever, like their foot into a door. And then later on, more often than not, they have needed to go back and get further education, whether it's a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, whatever that might be. And so one of the things I do encourage students, and Beth, I know that we've had these conversations too, is to think about what's considered stackable credentials. So making sure that whatever training you get is at the quality and at the level necessary to be able to take it to the next step and transfer those credits to help kind of build out a potential lifelong learner model.
So we've touched on, a couple of these things, but, again, just sort of wanting to, walk through, maybe Tanya, you can sort of walk through the questions that folks need to ask themselves, again, at the beginning of this process, things that they should think about as they're getting ready to, pursue choosing a right fit college.
Right. And so I guess like there are questions such as, why do you want to go to college? It might feel like that's the easiest solution right now, because career-wise, it might be hard given where our economy is. And so that might be that could be a good enough answer. But if it's going just to get that BAH, or if you're going just to like buy time until you can find a job, you're not doing yourself any favors. Like this is an investment, and this is a commitment. And so going to school, your transcript is going to follow you. And so you want to make sure that when you're going to college, why you want to go to college is really going to help you get to your long-term career goals. And again, as adults, we have to be thinking not just about, oh, this sounds fun. We have life responsibilities. And so thinking through all of those pieces is just really important. And then the next one goes, it kind of builds on that, is, are you academically and mentally prepared to make that transition because of those sacrifices that are there? I love learning. I do love learning. And it's funny because you kind of start the process of going to school, and then somewhere between like the start and the end, I probably got like multiple calls from my daughter this last year where she was like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? But ultimately it came back to like, because your long-term goals are X, Y, and Z. And so this is going to pay off in the end. So just stay the course, stay focused, and it's going to work you through. But sometimes there are things that you're going to want to build up and work on. So a friend of mine is going back to school as an adult, and she's getting ready she needs to take math, and she has to take the math placement test. And when she took the English placement test, she had not done either of those in a very long time. And so she needed to make sure before taking those tests, she was studying so that she wasn't going to waste time taking courses that were prep courses to get you to the place where you needed to be able to take actual degree granting courses. And so there's a process that you just want to set up. There's resources, and we'll touch on these later, but Khan Academy is a perfect example of a place you can go where you can actually go through some of these classes. They have geometry, they have algebra 2, they have it all. And they kind of take you through each process and help you learn. YouTube has a ton of, I've learned this all again with 2 kids that are actually now homeschooled, one of them being in geometry, is looking up on YouTube. There are different like videos of how to figure out certain equations. And so there's ways that you can academically prepare yourself even in quarantine and are helpful. And it helps you kind of avoid wasting benefits on things that you can prep for ahead of time. The other thing that I think is available I was talking to my friend last night again, is CLEP tests. And those are also another resource. If you're an active duty service member, those are covered under TA, and you can take CLEP tests for free. And what they do is there are, and College Board has partnered with some of the other groups out there that also offer like moduled courses that you can go through those courses to prep you to take then this test, and you can earn college credit that way as well. Obviously you would want to check with the school that you were getting ready to transfer to, or the school that you're currently attending, if those classes transfer and if they meet the college requirements. But there's different resources that are available to kind of help in that process. And then the next one goes on, like, do you have the background to be successful at a 4-year college, university, or at a community college? And if one of the things we often hear from, and Beth, I know you've heard this too, from potential students, is, I'm not college material. I did terrible in high school, or I went to college and my GPA was not great for that first semester, so I dropped out. And I always like to remind people that the brain's not fully done developing until around the age of 25. And a lot of times adults end up going back to school and doing so much better than they would have ever expected, especially service members and veterans. They do so well in school once they get to that part. And it's part of like just allowing, like giving yourself the freedom to say, hey, I wasn't really committed in high school. I was committed, but I might have had some learning challenges that no one ever was able to figure out or diagnose. And so there's just a lot of resources available. So to start out, there are options such as community college, where you can go and take affordable classes just to kind of see where you're at, build out an academic history.
Yeah, no, I agree absolutely. To this question, do you have the background to be successful? Absolutely. I think especially transitioning service members and veterans have the capacity to be successful. It may mean that they need to go to community college first before they hit that 4-year college. But all the things that they've learned while they've been in the military are definitely going to help them be successful. Just figuring out the right path for them. And it may not be directly into a 4-year college. It may be like you were suggesting, that they do something else before they start the application process. But they absolutely have the skills, I think, to be successful. Some other questions that we think they should ask themselves.
Yeah. Are there things you need to do first to reinvigorate your academic skills, or discover them for the first time in a focused way? Do you have the proper mindset to do so? And that kind of goes back to what I was talking to in the last set of slides. I kind of jumped ahead of us. Sorry, Beth. And that's just that we want to make sure, like, you want to make sure that you're ready. You don't want to waste time taking unnecessary classes when you talk to people who've transitioned out of the military and they're like, well, I didn't do that much in the military and I don't know. I don't think I'm available. I don't think I'll be readily available to take these stuff. When I worked at the American Council on Education, I worked for a while with joint service transcripts. And so we were able to look at military training and experience to give recommended credits based on the training and experience service members and service members received while serving. And what we found, what I heard consistently from professors and what I saw was the content, scope, and rigor of a lot of that coursework was fairly significant. And if you're able to make it through those courses and do well in them, it's there. You have the ability and you have the skills to do so, but it might just take a little bit of refreshing up and dusting off the cobwebs and doing stuff such as Khan Academy, community college, looking at some of the CLEP tests, just looking at some options to kind of help get your brain worked up. There's also Warrior Scholar Project that does a boot camp during the summer. One is focused on the humanities, reading and writing. And then they also have a 2-week one that also incorporates STEM. So science, technology, engineering, and math. And so there's different options that are available out there. The next one is how strong is your academic preparation? I feel like that fills back into it. So you might need a little bit of time to do that. And do you want to go to college, or are others telling you to go to college?
That's a good one that we hear.
Yeah. I go back to some of the freshmen that I worked with when I was a registrar, and there was a few kids, boys in particular, that they struggled that first year because they didn't know what they wanted to do. They didn't know why they were there. They didn't feel like there was a reason for them being there, but they went because everyone was telling them to go there. And so I would have mom and dad showing up in my office. And now you're all adults, so you're not going to have mom and dad showing up in the registrar's office, but it's the same concept. And I think you can transfer this to this kind of like experience to like answering some hard questions for yourself. Was I would talk to the student and then I would talk to the parents, and the student was like, well, I'm here because my parents told me I had to be here. And you talk to the parents and they're like, well, yeah, of course, this is the next step. And I think if you aren't going because you have your inner drive to do so, it's going to be really hard if you're going for others and not for you. And it's okay to be selfish, and it's okay to want to go for you.
Yep, absolutely. And I know we want to talk about sort of leading into that, if people are going through this process, the way we've sort of laid it out, they've made this intentional decision about applying to college. They've thought about some of the reasons, they've asked themselves questions as to why they want to do all of this. They know that they want to do it for themselves, that they're the ones that are going to college. I think the next step in the process is then really to think about some of the personal considerations as they start looking at schools that are out there. With all the schools that are out there, there's a lot of different things that people can focus on. And so just sort of wanted to run through some of the personal considerations they should think about now that they've made the decision that they want to start looking and exploring.
Right. And family is the first one on that list. And I definitely think for me, I'm definitely family first, right? And so when I was looking to go back to school and get a graduate degree, I did consider the family. I had very young kids and I was working a full-time job. And so I didn't want to do a program that was going to mean that I would miss seeing my kids grow up. And I didn't want to pull my kids at the time away from like what they were used to with their family and friends and stuff like that. And so I chose to find a school that was close by, that had, like, I could go one night or 2 nights a week and then be with my family the rest of the time, study after they went to bed, like those kinds of things, because I didn't want to uproot my family. But I know other people who have said, you know what, it's really important for me to go study in Europe at Oxford, or for me to move from California to New York, to go to Columbia, wherever it might be, because that's like been a lifelong dream. And so it's just making sure that it's like your family's involved in the decision-making process, and that you're going to set you all up for success. I talked to a student a number of years ago who ended up going to a great school, and he was at school in the north, and his family was in Florida, and he had like a 2-year-old. And when we were talking, he had a great experience, and he said, this is like the best opportunity available to me. But he was in tears. He said, but I just miss my family. I don't know if I can do this. And so it might sound great, it might sound possible, but like, there again, it just goes back to real conversations that you need, honest conversations you all need to have. The size of the school is also really important. Some people, when they're looking to go to school, they want that full college experience. They want to go to the football games. They want to tailgate. They want to, have all of those fun activities. Other people are wanting to go because they just want to get that degree and get out, and they want to go to like a high research institution where they can focus on research and school and everything serious, like that's very focused on the education aspect of it, the serious piece of it. And so, and that sometimes the size matters. And so in that case, or say, a lot of times when I'm talking to high school students that are getting ready to go into college, they may do better in smaller classes because they learn better with that one-on-one with the teachers. The classroom size of 300 plus kids in a room is not, or not kids, but individuals, because there is very much now a hybrid of adults, like, from 18 all the way up to 50 plus years old. I had a gentleman walk across my stage when I was registrar that was in his 72, and then he came back a few years later for his master's and walked across that stage. And so you're never too old to go to school. But do you want to sit in a classroom with 300, 500 students, or do you want to be in a smaller classroom where there's that interaction? So size matters. Location, we talked about location. Credits, how many credits are required? If you're going to go to, if you want to be a doctor, you have to understand that that's a good 6 years plus of education, of residency, of all these different things that are required. What credits have you taken already? Does it matter to you whether or not a school accepts your joint, like credits from your joint service transcript, or whether they accept any kind of transfer credits at all? Or is it more important to you that you go to a school that you get the full experience from beginning to end, and those types of things? Major, you want to make sure you go to a school that has the major that's going to get you to the career you want to be. It doesn't help you to go to a school if you want to be a business major and they don't have a business program. They have a liberal studies program, and so they tell you to go take liberal studies. You don't want that. You want to go in the program. You want to go to a school that's going to have that major. And then the type of learning environment. And that goes back to a little bit of what I touched on with size. Do you do better learning online? Do you do better learning in person? Is there a hybrid model? Do you need hands-on experience? Do you need that one-on-one with the teachers, with the professors? Like, how do you learn best, and what makes the most sense for you? My kids have learned that online learning is not for them. All three of them are adamant that that is not for them long-term. They'll make it work while they have to, but it's not how they learn. Other people I've spoken with, they've decided that that is a good option for them.
Yeah. Now, just to touch on a couple of these bullet points, I think credits, especially for transitioning service members, can be really important. A lot of them have the opportunity to take classes with tuition assistance, and so they have these credits. And so for some, they really want to be able to take those JST credits and have those apply to a particular institution and help them get through to their degree at a faster pace. And then for others, it may not, they're ready and willing to forego all of those credits and start over again. So you just need to sort of think through, that process. And then the type of learning environment. I think where we are today, people are probably getting an opportunity, if they're in class already, to do some things online. And they may have done that while they were, on active duty as well when they were deployed. But I know this is an opportunity for folks to really explore the different types of learning, to take a couple of courses online and see if that's something that you enjoy doing, or do you see yourself as somebody who really needs to be in a classroom? And back to, to size, what size school you are, where you attend, there may be some more opportunities to be in a smaller classroom setting in a small liberal arts college versus a large state institution where you may have some larger classrooms. So I think it's an opportune time to really sort of sort through and take the time now to think through some of these personal considerations and explore options to figure out what might be a good fit.
Absolutely. Can I touch one more time on the credits a little bit? I want to go back to that because there's a lot of conversation, one around schools promising acceptance of however many JST credits. And then the students start at the school, and so they're thinking, oh, I'm going to get through this real fast. And then they go and find out that actually they all went to electives. They have maybe a semester's worth of credits that have been taken care of, and it can cause a lot of problems down the road. Maybe while using TA, you went to school on TA, and then you're trying to transfer to another school after getting out, and you find out that school doesn't accept the credits that you took while using TA. And my recommendation to you is, please don't let those things get in your way. It might sound awesome to be able to go to a school and be like, oh, they're accepting 60 of my credits from my JST. And then you find out that actually, no, they didn't accept as many, or they did, but they just didn't go towards anything that's required for your degree. And you're kind of stuck. You're not going to get done any faster. And so, or likewise, if you went to a school where the credits don't transfer to these schools, you want to ask why did these credits not transfer? And I would talk to a few schools, and if a few schools are not going to transfer those credits from whatever school you attended while using TA, then most likely it's better for you, and I hate to say this, but it's better for you to start over at a place that's going to get you to where you want to be long-term career-wise. We've had a lot of students come to us who were wanting to go on and get their master's and their PhD, and they weren't able to get into any schools except for the one that they got their undergraduate degree in, because no one would accept it as a legitimate degree. So it's just ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of, you talked a little bit, just a few minutes right into career goals. Again, we started at the top by talking about how important it is to make sure that whatever you're doing, whatever pathway you're taking, whether that be, to get some credentials, to go to community college, to go to a four-year college, that's all connected ultimately to your career goals. And I think especially in the time that we're living in, what you ultimately want to do after you get through whatever experience is going to be extremely important. You can touch a little bit on what they should think about in terms of career.
Talk to people in the industry for which you want to go. And you can go onto LinkedIn, you can go onto Twitter and find people who are in those industries and ask questions. What are these? Look at some of the job descriptions that are out there and the requirements for those jobs. What are they looking for? What kind of degree program are they looking for? What kind of training call and talk to them. Are there schools where you wouldn't hire someone who graduated from there? Are there programs that you wouldn't consider if I went to this school? Ask a lot of questions, find out what industry is doing, where they're hiring from, and why they're hiring from there, and what programs they're hiring from, because that will help you identify what's going to be the best fit for you. And that goes on to what do you like to do right after you graduate from college versus long-term. And there is there is kind of a building process and stacking process. And so college might be that opportunity right after you're getting out of the military, or it might be that opportunity right after you're getting, you're transitioning jobs because of COVID. And so you want to, there is that short term, especially, paying bills. You do need to think short term, like as soon as I need to get something just to help me pay my bills, like at this moment in time. But is that long term what I want to do? Or long term, is this just like the starting place for me? And how do I build from there? And so you want to, like, it just goes back to kind of what we talked about earlier with the stackable credentials and the transferable skills. I strongly encouraged my daughter to look at a major that would be used in multiple areas, that she could take those skills and transfer them to whatever project or program she wants to do long term, like career wise. And so those are things that I think are really helpful.
So we mentioned, one of the topics that we wanted to touch on is really higher education. And rather than dig, too deep into the different types of schools out there, public, private, liberal arts, research, there were 2 points that you and I, as we were talking this through, thought would be key things to touch on for this webinar. And that's accreditation and sort of the fiscal foundation of these colleges and universities. So I know you're an expert when it comes to accreditation and issues around that. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that for folks.
I think it's really important for people to understand the differences in accreditation and their different types of accreditation. So there's regional accreditation and national accreditation, and we touch on this too in the course that Beth is going to highlight at the end of this. But regional accreditation sounds like it would be the one you wouldn't want to consider, but it's actually the one that is more often than not going to be transferable to any other school. And so when you're looking at accreditation, 9.5 times out of 10, you're going to want to look at regionally accredited institutions. If you want to be a Harley Davidson mechanic, I think they're nationally accredited, but you have to go to Harley Davidson school to do that, then you do that. But more often than not, if you're talking about stackable credentials and credits that will transfer wherever you go, you want to make sure that you're looking at schools that are going to give you the most opportunity to transfer those credits and build on that training. There's one step further from accreditation, and that's accreditation related to whatever program you're wanting to train in. So if you want to be a social worker or if you want to be a teacher, it's really important for you to find out if the program that you're looking to go into is actually going to be is approved and accredited by whoever the industry experts are in that area. So if you need to be a psychologist, if you want to be social worker, like there's certain state by state accreditations that take place, and then there's also programmatic accreditations, and so it's so important to find out. Just because the name has teaching in it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to be a teacher when you're done with that. And like if you look at being an attorney, is the school you're attending going to allow you to sit for the bar? And are they ABA approved? Or if you want to be a teacher, different states have different requirements to get your teaching credential. And so if you're getting your teaching education, your teaching credential in California, but you want to move to North Dakota, you just want to make sure that that credential is transferable, or that you're taking the classes you need to be able to get you into that career field. Like you're going to a school that's going to give you that option. And then fiscal foundation. Higher ed is going to see a big shift, and is seeing a big shift right now, with having to transition to online, having to address no longer having students living on campus, even just for one semester. And so you're going to see changes, and it's really important to figure out how strong fiscally the school is that you're looking at attending, to make sure that they'll be around for the full 4 years or 2 years or 1 year that you're wanting to attend. Unfortunately, we've already started to see schools announced that they're closing their doors, a lot like some of the businesses that we've seen in the area starting to close their doors. And so you just want to make sure that the school that you're looking at attending is going to be fiscally sustainable while you're at school.
And can you talk just on that point in particular, because I know Veterans Education Success has dealt with trying to help service members, student veterans, current student veterans, when schools have shut down. Can you just briefly touch on, I don't want to dig in too much, but just talk about what they should think about should, after they choose a school that maybe isn't on, the best, most stable ground, if it does end up shutting down. What are some of their options? What are the things that you recommend, as an organization for them to think about?
So I think the
worst scenario.
Right. The first thing to do is contact us. We actually have attorneys who provide casework for free for students who've been impacted by closed schools. And so in some cases, there are opportunities to get your 1 semester of GI Bill back if credits haven't transferred to another school. There's not always, it's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts, but we can provide some support for that. My recommendation is hopefully you went to a school that was solid enough that those credits would transfer and that you don't give up. We've been working with a student for the last year who attended Argosy University, and when they shut down, he lost his house, he lost his car, and he had a family, and he wanted to give up. And we worked with him, and we were able to get him into an amazing university who had a great veterans programs, who really worked with him. And then we were able to get him, his disability ended up being upgraded, and got him into voc rehab, which helped pay for the rest of his undergraduate program, and is allowing him to go on to get the master's degree he needs in order to be the social worker that he wants to be. And so it's so discouraging, because you feel kind of let down and frustrated or sad or disappointed. And those are all legitimate feelings, but there are still options available, and there are some really good opportunities. So don't just give up and walk away. Reach out to us. We can provide support. Sometimes there's options for student loan, getting your student loans dismissed because of closed schools, federal student loans. There's a lot of different opportunities out there to kind of help you through this process. And we have some pretty great staff members who can help with that.
Yeah, I just think, we may have folks that come to this webinar are currently in school somewhere and are looking, because they're going to have to, transfer to another institution. So I just wanted to make sure that people know that there are resources should you find yourself in a situation where the school you're attending has to close, for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of great, obviously, like with you guys, and we have a lot of great relationships with schools throughout the country. And so one of my big things is making sure we can do a warm handoff between you and whatever school it is that you're looking at, or helping you kind of go, well, maybe that wasn't the program I really wanted. Maybe this is better. And so sometimes it's an option to better pinpoint long-term what it is that you want to do. And so I try to look at it as potentially an opportunity for some positive things too.
Right. So we talked about this as well, but I want to dig in a little bit deeper into academic readiness, because this is something that I hear a lot from folks that are transitioning, that what you just mentioned earlier, this idea of, well, I did poorly in high school, or maybe I did a semester at college and then had to drop out and went into the military, and I just don't think I can make this transition to a 4-year college. So I want to have you talk a little bit more about academic readiness, and again, the end state being that we know people can get to where they want to go. I always say to people, it's, I never give them a no when they say they want to go to a particular institution, maybe well, not right now. We got to do some things. But can you talk a little bit about academic readiness?
Yeah, first of all, I feel like when I talk to potential military connected students in general, and then when I actually talk to military connected students, the first thing I almost always hear out of their mouth is, oh, I'm just not academic material. I'm not college material. I can't do that. And And I laugh because I'm like, well, I've heard that before. And then I've seen them go on and do exceedingly well in school. But there is a process to kind of get yourself there and to build out your academic self-confidence. And so some of that is like what we've talked kind of throughout is things such as going to the community college, taking a few classes, building out your transcript. I had another student, a senior in high school, who really wanted to go to this dream school. She so badly wanted to go there and she did not get accepted. And so I encouraged her to go to community college for a year, get really good grades in the classes that she took, and then reapply. And so what she did is her grades weren't quite there to get into the school she wanted. And so she really focused on school over that time. And after 1 year, she's been able to transfer to the school that was her dream school because she was able to kind of build out her academic record a little bit more and show growth in those areas. And schools are looking for growth. They want to see that you can ultimately do it. And so taking a couple classes at a community college, taking some CLEP tests, those are things that you can kind of build out on your academic record to get you to where you need to be to kind of demonstrate how amazing you're going to do in school.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing is, in terms of what courses people can take, I know a lot of times active duty service members, if they're deployed or if they're in a particular MOS, they can't take in-person classes. And what I say to them, is for the time being, if you're looking to sort of get your feet wet, get back into the classroom, go ahead and take some online courses. Even if you know the school that you want to transfer to isn't going to ultimately accept those credits, the admission officers are going to look at that. They are going to look at the classes that you've taken. It's about building this, academic success record. And however you can start that is important to start it and just get active, and then hopefully get yourself in a classroom at some point. So that you can.
And there's a lot of great state schools that offer online programs, and they do so much support for student veterans and military connected students. So active duty service members, student veterans, they provide such great support and such great classes, and those oftentimes will be able to transfer, and depending on what school you go to. Some of the private, smaller liberal arts schools may not, but it just helps you build out show your competence is what it is.
And again, at this point in time, with everybody being in an online scenario, I imagine that a lot of the institutions that in the past haven't been able to or didn't want to, accept online credits are going to be accepting them, at least in the interim. So this transition year that we're in right now with people applying, for this upcoming, spring 2021 and fall, 2021, we may see a little bit more flexibility in what courses they accept and the grading systems that are accepted. Again, it's up to the person who's applying to make sure that that's the case, but I imagine that things may look a little bit different just because of the scenario that we're in.
Absolutely. Take advantage of it.
Exactly right. So we've gone through this intentional decision-making process. We've talked about, thought about career goals and, academic readiness. And now people are out there and they're doing their research and they're putting together lists of schools they think they might want to attend. What are some of the questions that they need to be asking these institutions that are on their big list right now?
I think these three things right here are very much them. The first one are related to finances. How much is it ultimately going to cost? Don't look at the original, like if you're going to their website and it's saying like, oh, estimated cost for a year is however much money. Don't let the sticker price shock you, because a lot of times these schools offer different types of financial aid. A lot of them are needs-based institutions, and so they can offer different types of financial aid that you may not be available, that you may not know are available. So don't let that stop you. For state schools, your GI Bill should cover most of the cost of it as you would get the in-state tuition, which is the cost of the GI Bill. So don't ever let the price stop you first. And then the second question is ask a lot of questions, because you want to make sure that as much as possible is laid out for you ahead of time. Don't go with the whole like, oh, we're going to give you $5,000. We promise we're going to pay for your whole thing. You're never going to have to take out student loans. And then later on you realize, oh, I had to take out a whole bunch of student loans. Uh, it's okay to ask a ton of questions. It's okay to ask other students who've attended. You can go online and do some research as far as that is concerned, because there are very many opportunities out there beyond just, you may not be eligible for GI Bill, or you may have already used all your benefits. There's other options out there. And so just keep looking and see what's available. Veteran specific, I think it's really important. What we found in research is that community amongst military connected students is huge in helping time to completing, like being able to go through a program together as a unit, because you have people who can kind of relate with you and understand where you've been and what you've been through, and kind of providing that support for each other in the process, I think is really important and helpful. And knowing that the school has a designated person that you can go to who also understands what you might be doing and might be able to advocate on your behalf when situations arise. And so if that's important to you, some people, they don't feel like that's important to them, but if that's something that's important to you, I think it's good to ask the schools about the types of programs that they have available. And we talk about in the module about going to the school and talking to the students. And since that's not an option, you can actually reach out to the school, and I'm sure they would be happy to connect you with some of their students so that you could talk to them on the phone, via email, whatever, to kind of get ideas of their experience at the school, and just making sure that if they say they're veteran friendly, that they really are veteran friendly, and able to support you in that aspect. And then as far as transfer courses and credits, we've talked about this a lot. Like, it's really important, one, to find out what is most important to you. Is the school that you want to go to more important than whether or not the credits you've taken at other schools will transfer? Or do you really want to make sure that, you have 2 years, you need to get done. And on the reverse end, you want to make sure that the courses that you're taking, that the program that you're taking at that school would transfer to other schools. And so I recommend students call 2 or 3 other schools and say, hey, if I took a degree from this program, if I started here and I transferred to you, would you accept X, Y, and Z? Or would I be able to apply for a master's program if I finished my bachelor's degree from this program at this school? And so those are some good things to ask as you're making a decision on a school that's the right fit for you.
And some schools as well will, if you share your transcripts with them, they can take a look and give you a general sense of what might be accepted, and also just do an evaluation of how competitive you might be for admission. So make sure, I always encourage people just to ask as many questions as they can, especially I know sometimes for married transitioning service members, they're concerned about opportunities for their spouse, and asking those kinds of questions, and asking questions around, childcare and housing and schools. All of those may become, important, and just see how the different colleges and universities answer those questions.
Transportation too. Yeah, there's a lot there.
So we've got about 8 minutes, and I think we're in our last little section, but just to give you the time stamp on all of this. So we've done all this research, we've thought about it, we've thought about our career goals, we've asked questions, and now we want to put together this college list. And so just briefly, Tanya, if you can sort of go over what are the things, the different categories you can put different schools in, and how do you, come up with that list?
So usually you want to have the school, you want to create at least the 3 buckets, the likely. So you want to look at the schools and say, what is their acceptance rate? How easy would it be for me to get into this school? And there are some schools where they have, 100% acceptance rate, or they have an 80% acceptance rate. And so, or 75%. And these are their requirements. The X, Y, and Z on your SAT, X, Y, and Z on GPA, you know that you meet all of those requirements. That would be like an easy, low-hanging fruit school that you know you could get into. And so you put schools that you know would be likely to get into one bucket, and then you say, but I really want to go to this school, and this is where I want to try to go. And it might be a little bit of a reach, but I think I could get there. I have a close enough GPA, or I have my GPAs right on the line of what they're looking for. Whatever, like, so that's the target school. That is like your dream school. Not your dream school, but like, well, yeah, it could be your dream school. But then there might be like this reach of, holy cow, I would never get into the school, but I would love to at least try. And that would be your reach school. And that where it is like, you want to make sure that when you're applying for schools, you kind of do all three. You don't want to limit yourself to just the likely, or just the likely and the target. I think you always want to kind of see what you might be out there, because you might be surprised. And I've had so many students that I've worked with, and Beth, I'm sure you too, where they were like, there's no way I'd ever get into this school. And then they get into it, and they're like, wow, I got in. And so I think it's important to kind of have those three buckets and apply to schools in all three of those buckets.
Yeah, and I think we generally, say to folks, having a list between 5 and 10, but that crosses all three of those different categories. And remembering too, in terms of GPA, GPA is a number, but that's based on all the courses that you've taken. But remember that the admissions folks are also going to be looking at what those courses are. So if you're taking your general education courses, you're taking your English composition, your math courses, some solid courses, a 3-5 where you've done those types of courses, compared to a 3-5 where you've done a lot of electives and things that
basket weaving
right, is very different. So you've got to take a look at everything that you're bringing to the table. And again, as I mentioned earlier, some admission offices will do an evaluation of your transcript and give you a sense of how competitive you might be for admission to that school.
And schools are really moving towards, I know we're running really tight on time, but schools are moving more and more towards also like looking at the holistic student, and what can that student bring to the larger campus and population of students. And so your experience is definitely something that you want to highlight in the admissions essay, and what you can bring, what is it that you can give to that school that no one else can. And I think it's important to think through that as well, and don't discount yourself on your ability to do that.
Right. And so I wanted to give us a few minutes. We've got about 4 minutes to see if there are, any questions. I thought about some things that that I've heard over the years that we can, talk about briefly, just in case people are thinking about, these things. One of the questions that I hear a lot is, and we talked about this, but are highly selective institutions really interested in having veterans on campus? And I don't know if I know, speaking from Columbia University, that absolutely we, desire and recruit and look to have active duty service members, transitioning service members come to our institution. Have you seen the same? What have you seen sort of in this space? It goes back to that idea of those reach schools that sometimes are the most selective, and people not thinking that they, would ever be able to be accepted there. Have you seen anything in the?
Absolutely. And in the last, I would say 8-9 years of working in this area, I've seen significant growth in that area as well. And I'm consistently hearing from these reach schools that are saying, we want to do more. We want veterans at our school. They offer so much to the environment. And what can we do to get more at our school? And how can we support them? How can we make sure that they have a good experience here? And so I go back to the whole, don't discount or discredit yourself in what it is that you can do or where you could potentially get, because there's so many opportunities and there's so many schools that really see the value of having your experience, your life experience, and your perspective, and the leadership, and the hard work, and all of these things that military connected students tend to bring with them, and how they enrich the classroom.
Yeah, I always say to folks, just give it a try. you know, you never know, and there are resources and folks that are, you know, here to sort of help you, support you as you want to go through that application process. So just sort of wanted to, you know, wrap up in the last, you know, couple of minutes. Again, the things that we, you know, we talked about, making an intentional decision about, you know, choosing a pathway toward higher education, you know, going through some questions to ask yourself. Certainly you want to communicate with friends and family and talk to your mentors, and as you're trying to sort through all this, but questions, you know, that you think are important to you as you make this decision. Certainly, you know, personal considerations are important. Location, size, we talked a little bit about that as well. You know, what are some of the things that you might be thinking about in terms of career goals? That should be the start of where you start this process. And, you know, we talked a little bit about higher education. Two of the most important things that we think during this time are always to focus on accreditation and the fiscal foundation that the college or university is on, academic readiness. Are you ready right now? Do you need to do some other things? Do you need to take some more classes, take some time before you know, apply to college? If you are ready and you've answered all of these questions, what are the questions you want to ask colleges and universities as you're going through, you know, this process? And then finally, once you get the answers to those questions, how do you go about making a college list, including, you know, your likely, your target, and your reach schools? And so this was really a quick hour of what is, for us, an entire module in a course, you know, that we have. And so, you know, I just sort of wanted to talk a little bit about the center and point people to where they can get some more, you know, information. Center for Veteran Transition and Integration is all about providing resources and courses that can help you navigate getting to, through, you know, and beyond college. So we'd encourage you to, you know, check out some of the things that we have, including Attaining Higher Ed. Again, Tanya was an instructor for module 3, which is choosing a right fit college, and she digs in a little bit deeper than we were able to do, you know, in an hour. But you can, you know, jump into that course. It's hosted on edX and get, you know, answers to these questions, and also the college application. We have an entire module dedicated to intentional decision making, how to fill out the college application, and how to go about financing your education. So check out that course. Best way to find it is ahe.cvti.info. And I think that's it for us. So we appreciate you spending time. Thank you, Tanya, for giving up, you know, of your time to help us do this. And we look forward to answering more questions and being in touch and helping you reach your goals.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.